Hello everybody. Today I would like to talk about a show called Evangelion, which is sometimes also pronounced as Evangelion. And people right at the beginning, because I'm not a huge manga guy, I'm not a huge anime guy. If anybody's clicking on this video, I'm sure right at the beginning they'll complain, why are you calling it Evangelion? You should call it Evangelion, that's its real name. Okay, well I'm gonna call it Evangelion because the robots are called Evas, and also the whole thing is about Adam and Eve. So Evangelion, even though a bunch of YouTube videos are calling it Ava. I mean, you guys can argue about it. You can get upset about it. I'm not pretending to be an expert on this show. I'm going to express my opinion about this deeply convoluted and complex and strange anime, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But I'm going to express my opinion, and if you're a huge anime fan and a huge fan of the show, you're probably going to disagree with a lot of what I say. And that's fine. And that's okay. But let's just get this straight out of the gate, okay? Off the bat. Let's get this sorted right at the beginning. I'm going to call it Evangelion. It's a show which was first published in 1995. Published is probably the wrong word. Transmitted. Broadcast. It was broadcasted first in 1995. The initial run of the show had 26 episodes. It's then been adapted into manga, and there's been a novel, and there's been various films. There's been the revival of Evangelion, Death and Rebirth, the end of Evangelion, and the rebuild of Evangelion, which is the new one. Why did this happen? Because the ending was unsatisfactory for a lot of the fan base. They didn't like it. They didn't enjoy it. They weren't happy, and they sent death threats and various other mean messages and so on and so forth to the creator of the show, a guy called Hideaki Anno. And so in reaction to this, he basically made a movie which, explained exactly, in more depth what he actually wanted to say to end the show. And then later on, obviously in 2000, he did the show all over again, and he called this the rebuild of Evangelion. And this is the same show all over again, but it moves in a totally different direction, and it's got different characters in it, and it reaches a different conclusion. Okay, in this video presentation, I'm going to be talking about the first Evangelion, the first series, and its ending and its conclusion. I will talk about the other ones, but my feeling is that the first 26 episodes, that's the real Evangelion. That's the real Evangelion. And it might have even been better if Hideaki Anno had just stopped there. It would have been hilarious. I don't know if the show would be as famous as it is now if he had have just stopped there. I think maybe it would have been. But I don't know. I'm not going to complain too much about the rewrites and the videos that followed afterwards, because it is interesting, and it has become part of the nature of the story. This story is a great story, not simply because it's a great story in itself, but it's a great story because of the story of the author and the story of the way in which the story was created, and the story of the fans' reaction to the ending, which then forced another ending to be made, which was also kind of insane and crazy and unsatisfactory, and then created all kinds of responses on the internet, and so much introspection, and so much head scratching and chaos and madness in the fan base as they try to figure out what the hell the show is all about, which then led to another series a couple of decades later. So Evangelion's famous. First of all, it is a great story without all of that, but it's undeniable that part of the beauty of this magnificent anime is the effect, the maddening effect it has on the audience. people don't know what to make of it. People watch the first few episodes, they find it to be fascinating, they get sucked into it. They're watching Shinji Ikari fighting in the Eva, fighting these giant angels, and getting caught up in this mysterious organization called Nerve, with this strange relationship with his father, and with these weird anime girls that are kind of looking after him, and it's like, wow, what is going on? And you get drawn in, and there's all these like exposition kind of. There's no clear exposition. This is the genius of it. There is no clear exposition. You do not really know what is happening. You are very much placed within Shinji's shoes. Shinji does not really understand what is happening. He is the main protagonist. He is a young 14-year-old boy, and he is plunged into this battle unwillingly. He's told, he's forced to. He's given a choice. He doesn't have to, but he's asked to pilot this giant mech to fight these aliens. And he says, "I don't know how to do this. I've never been taught to fight. You've just picked me up on the side of the street, and now you're telling me I've got to get inside this giant mech and fight an alien? What the hell?" And they say, "Okay, if you don't have the balls for it, go away." But then they're going to get this girl to do it, and she's all like, her arms broken, and she's like messed up. So he's like, "Okay, I'll do it. You know, better me than her." And he defeats the angel, so he's a great hero. But he's plunged into this difficult situation, and he does not know really what is going on and why he's there. And in a similar way, the audience that gets hooked on this interesting, quirky story, we also don't know, because there's no clear exposition. And so you watch the whole show thinking, well, this is going to make sense at some point, right? So at some point, I'm going to understand, what are the angels? What is the Eva? What's going on with Shinji's father? What's going on with Rei? What's going on with Lilith and Adam? What is this strange organization called SEAL? What is this all about? What was the first impact? What was the second impact? What's the third impact? You think and you hope, right, that the show is going to explain all of this to you, but it doesn't. Not really. It's all like on the edges and weird and in suspended animation and up in the air, and you're scratching your head thinking, what's going on? But you're carried along with the story because of the violence, which is great. You know, huge robots fighting aliens. That's fantastic. And also because of the characters interacting with each other. The teenage drama. 14-year-old Shinji Ikari and Rei Ayanami and Asuka, the crazy German girl. And their interactions, and Shinji's interaction with the girl that is looking after him, Misato Katsuragi. And you watch all of this, you see the violence, you see the looming threat, you know there's a prophecy, you know the angels are going to keep coming, you know there's something really bad. Like there's an ongoing threat that cannot be escaped. You're in a war, but you don't really know the solution to the war, and you're pulled along with this, and you're expecting that everything's going to get explained, but then at the end of the show, it doesn't get explained at all. At the end of the show, or the first 26 episodes anyway, the last 2 or 3 episodes just go totally weird, totally off the wall. Weird Japanese introspection, psychological introspection, mental breakdown for Shinji, mental breakdown for all of the characters, basically. And then, in my opinion, pure solipsism, right? Which is something which I haven't seen any of the video. I've watched a whole bunch of videos to try and understand what Evangelion's about. In my opinion, it's pure solipsism. It's essentially, it's laid out that all of the characters are in Shinji's mind. They're all in his mind. They're all part of him. and he's imagining them all. But anyway, at the end of the show, Shinji basically says, "Well, I'm happy to be me. I accept myself with all of my faults, and I don't care so much if I'm lonely." And it's a rejection of the human instrumentality project, which is this. Again, none of this is really explained in the show, because you'll get to the end of the show, you'll be scratching your head like, what the hell was that all about? Shinji rejects the human instrumentality project. He rejects the merging of all humanity into one giant blob. He rejects this. He embraces his individuality. He forgives himself, and he grows up. Essentially, the entire story is the story of Shinji growing up. But you don't get the exposition from the show. Not in the 26 episodes. If you were watching this in Japan in 1995 on TV without internet access, without Wikipedia, without access to a YouTube video that can explain what it's all about, you would be tearing your hair out, thinking, what did I just watch? How does it make sense? So, what I'm trying to say here is that this is the genius of Evangelion. It is a story without an exposition. It is a story without a clear exposition. It is proof to me that character is more important than plot. And character is more important than world building. Now, Evangelion does have a great plot and it does have great world building, but it's not clear. That is all murky in the background. Evangelion as a story is driven forward by Shinji and his relationship with Rei Ayanami, and his relationship with his father, and his relationship with Asuka, and his relationship with Misato. The girls, essentially. And all of the lust that's involved. It's a very sexual story. And this is another thing which I've noticed in... As I say, I watched the 26 episodes, and I thought, well, I'm going to make a video about this. I'm going to talk about this. But I have to figure out what this show's about before I can talk about it. And there's a lot of videos explaining it, blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. Hardly anybody touches on the sexual aspect of the show, but it's a very sexual show. Typical Japanese, teenage horniness on full display. Shinji, accidentally walking around the house naked. Asuka, I'm probably garbling her name up. It sounds like Oscar to me, but anyway, Asuka, the German girl in the show, calling Shinji a sex pervert repeatedly and expressing her love for an older man, Rei Ayanami, expressing her love for an older man. It's kind of like Shinji the 14-year-old with two other 14-year-old girls who he gets to see naked, but they both love older men. And he kind of like half fancies the older lady that he's with, and she's having a relationship with another guy, and there's a lot of sex in the show. There's a lot of weird sex going on. Shinji's father is a bit of a sex maniac. You find out he's been doing it with 3 different ladies in the show and just using them. But there's a lot of explosive teenage energy and sexuality and passion and boiling up emotion and high school drama, and this is what makes the show interesting. And obviously the violence is, if it was just that without the giant robots beating each other to death, then it wouldn't be so much fun. But the characters drive the story along. This is the point I'm trying to make here. The characters drive the story along, not the plot, not the exposition. Or another way to look at it is, you could say the exposition does drive the plot along, but only because it's not clear. It's an unclear exposition, so you just don't know what's going on. So you're scratching your head watching it, thinking, it's like you see Chekhov's gun, but the gun is not being used, and you're waiting for it to be used, but then another gun turns up, and then another gun, and what's going on? What is this all about? When is somebody going to explain this to me? And you get a little bit of an explanation, but as part of it gets explained, then another element of weirdness is added, and another element of weirdness is added, and each explanation just creates more questions, and so you don't really understand what's happening at the end of it. And that's the genius of it. It's great story writing. It really is great story writing. And there are stories out there, I don't know, I think Game of Thrones or something like this, right? Game of Thrones is a very clear kind of world building, and a lot of effort has been put into it. And if you read the books, you can quite easily understand what happened and why it happened. And there's some mystery, but most of it's quite clear cut. In Evangelion, it's all mystery. You're in a strange world and no one's explaining it to you. And it's frustrating. And you want to know. So that's part of the hook. That's part of the hook. For sure. And you get carried on with all the teenage drama. And the result is, like I say, this is part of this. This is why Evangelion is so famous. Partly because it's a great story, but also because it's so confusing, and this drove the audience mad, so that they forced the creator to make another show, and then another show, and then another show, and then it's all on the internet, and there are so many videos, and then people get obsessed with it. You create an obsession. You create a cult show, because people are just trying to scratch their heads and fit the whole thing together. So, having said all that, what is the show about, you may be asking? Okay, well, I'll try to explain. And bear in mind here, this is my explanation and my understanding, my limited understanding of what this is all about. If you want a really in-depth explanation, first of all, you've got to watch the show, and, well, you've got to watch all of it, and then you're going to have to watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos and try and figure it out and piece the whole thing together, and probably, read the wiki and find some fan base forum or whatever, and then maybe you'll understand. I'm just going to give you what my understanding is, okay? So essentially there are these ancient beings who are, out there in the universe, and they're old and they're powerful, but they're dying out for some reason, and they want to spread life throughout the galaxy. So they create these other beings, and they send them off into the galaxy to spread life, okay? One of them lands on this earth. His name is Adam, and Adam is the progenitor of the angels. Adam has the ability to create very, very powerful beings, hundreds of feet tall, who are self-powered and who do not need food and water and whatever. Then, for whatever reason, I think this is an accident, there is another powerful being who also arrives on planet Earth, and her name is Lilith. Now, of course, this is from the Bible. Adam and Eve, if in Kabbalah, or I think it's in the book of Enoch, which is a part of the Bible that wasn't included in the Bible, it is said that Adam's first wife was Lilith. And Lilith, as I say, in Jewish mysticism, in Kabbalah, and in the Middle East, is known as the mother of demons. Okay, there's actually a feminist magazine, as far as I understand it, called Lilith. Some people say she's the mother of Cain. Some people with the archangel Samuel. I don't know if that's true at all, but she is essentially she was Adam's first wife, and Adam divorced her because she wouldn't follow his orders. Okay. So anyhow, Adam. So this is where these ideas are coming from. So Adam is the first arriver. He's the creator of the angels. Lilith also arrives, and my understanding is that this is an accident. And Adam arrives on something called the white moon. Lilith arrives on something called the black moon. And this is the first impact. She crashes into planet Earth. There's a huge impact. There's rubble, and our moon is formed out of the rubble, or what have you. Adam not wanting there to be two forms of life on planet Earth, he impales himself with the spear of Longinus. Okay? Whatever that is, right? And Lilith creates life, and Lilith creates humanity. And humanity has intelligence, but they don't have the strength that the angels have. Some people, I've watched some YouTube videos that say humanity is a mistake and an accident, and they didn't want to create it. And so you have this whole theme that you see in like Aliens, in the Alien franchise, where the engineers created humanity and they don't like them, they want to kill them off, they're not happy with them. It's the whole Chariots of the Gods theme. But the chariots, the gods that are riding the chariots don't like humanity. I'm not sure whether humanity was an accident or not. Regardless, humanity is created by Lilith. Humanity thrives on planet Earth. Then somewhere along the line, an organization is formed called SEAL. I think it's formed in Germany. They get the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they know, because when Adam arrived and when Lilith arrived, the Dead Sea Scrolls arrived also. And the Dead Sea Scrolls give a prophecy as to what will happen. Okay? So they know that the angels are going to arrive. They know that there's going to be a second impact. They know that there's going to be a third impact, and so on and so forth. So this mysterious organization called SEAL, they send a mission to Antarctica to find Adam. And they send Gendu Ikari, who is Shinji's father, to Antarctica on this mission. Now, what happens is they discover Adam in a fetus-like state in Antarctica. Gendu, there are either a couple of things going on. Either Gendu does this deliberately or there's an accident, but whatever the case, the second impact happens. So there's a huge explosion, and Antarctica melts, and this causes the sea level to rise. Billions of people die. Then there's a huge war. Billions more die. Humanity's like huge disaster. Finally, peace is declared, and the United Nations, and they declare peace. The remaining humans, they stop trying to kill each other, and humanity starts getting ready for the arrival of the angels. They know the angels are going to appear in 2015. So then, also in this second impact in Antarctica, Misato Katsuragi is rescued by her father. She's there as a young girl, and her father was a scientist there, and he puts her into an escape pod, and she manages to survive. She's one of the sole survivors of this accident, and then she goes on to join Nerve and ends up looking after Shinji. So after this disaster in Antarctica, humanity starts getting ready for the arrival of the angels. An organization is formed called Nerve, and Nerve creates the Evas, and they create the Evas in order to fight the angels, and Gendu is in charge of Nerve. So then what happens is they have many attempts to create the Evas. Many of them fail. Usually they use Adam for the creation of the Evas, but for Eva 01 they use Lilith for whatever reason. Unit 01 is the Eva which Shinji Ikari goes on to pilot. What happens is his mother, for mysterious reasons, again, like I say, a lot of this plot, nobody's really sure what happened, why it happened. That's part of the nature of the story. That's part of the beauty of Evangelion. And as I said before, it works. Well, it works for two reasons. Firstly, because the story is essentially about Shinji. It's about him growing up and becoming a man. It's about him being forced into an adult situation and being forced to act like an adult and take responsibility and man up, and etc., etc. So it's about him growing up. That's the essence of Evangelion. But he doesn't understand the situation. So as you're following him, it makes sense that the audience doesn't understand the situation. It works. That's part of the beauty. And the second aspect of the beauty, as I've just laboriously and repeatedly explained is that it drives the audience insane. But anyhow, point being, why this happens, I'm not sure. But Shinji, our protagonist, his mother decides to get into Evangelion 01, and she is then absorbed by the Evangelion. She basically melts into I think the liquid is called LCL. LCL, as I explained before, is this orange liquid substance which humanity is supposedly made of. Okay? And one of the big conspiracies is SEAL, the organization. They want to push forward something called the Human Instrumentality Project, which is going to melt all human beings back into their orangeness, right? So for whatever reason, she melts into the LCL. So she kind of like merges with the Evangelion that Shinji ends up piloting, right? And Shinji, he loses his mother. His father doesn't give a damn about him. And so what happens is his father, because he's an asshole, he rejects Shinji, doesn't want him, doesn't need him, and doesn't look after him, doesn't care for him. And he then becomes, essentially, this is the point where Gendo Ikari, Shinji's father, separates himself from SEAL, essentially, because he loses his wife and he's in love with his wife. Some people have said that the only reason he married his wife was because she was a daughter of one of the SEAL members and he wanted to get into this mysterious organization. That may or may not have been true, but whatever the case, he ended up loving her and he misses her. And now his motivations change. He doesn't want to just use Nerve and use the Evas to achieve the third impact, to follow through with the Human Instrumentality Project, which is what SEAL wants to happen. Instead, he wants to use the third impact to bring his dead wife back to life. How exactly that's going to work, I'm not sure. And in the film, things get convoluted. Like I say, Evangelion doesn't make sense. The plot is weird. I don't really think it's supposed to make sense. Another idea that is presented is that perhaps he wants to himself become a god by absorbing the power of Lilith and Adam, or something like this. I don't know, but he becomes obsessed with his dead wife, and his motivations are separated from the organization which he's supposed to be following, which is SEAL. That's the beginning of the split. So that's a key plot moment. Shinji's mother is absorbed into the Eva. His father doesn't care for him. His father's a total shitbag. Doesn't care for him. So anyway, the it's just such a weird story. So they create all the Evas. So then what happens is, because Gendo misses his wife, he first tries to retrieve her from Eva, and he ends up creating Rei Ayanami by accident, who's essentially a clone of his wife. Okay? And she doesn't have a soul in the beginning, so she ends up being given the soul of Lilith, right? How that makes sense, I don't understand. Does that make her an angel? I don't understand. Okay, I don't think anybody understands. But anyway, they create her. She's a clone. Okay? Which, by the way, is why throughout the course of the series, the pilots of the Evas are called children. They're not called like it's children number 1, children number 2, children number 3. Some people think this is a translation mistake. It's not. It's because the first pilot is Rei Ayanami, and she is a clone. So there are many, many of her, and if she dies, they just bring another clone back to life, right? And move the soul into the next clone or whatever. This is why she's very quiet. This is why she's very obedient. This is why she doesn't have high self-esteem. She doesn't have human emotions. She doesn't cry. She just follows orders. She's quite a tragic character, really. Shinji tries to reach out to her, form some kind of friendship with her. Maybe he has an emotional, he fancies her. There's a very hilarious scene where he goes to where she lives. She's living in total poverty, and I don't know why a 14-year-old girl's living by herself, when she's piloting an Ava, but whatever. She's living in total poverty and squalor, and like he goes in to see her. She comes out of the shower naked. He ends up falling on top of her and whatever. Like I say, the whole show is very sexually charged. That's part of the fascination. Like, none of the videos seem to admit it, but it's like it's got a bunch of, naked 14-year-old teenage girls running around the place. But he falls on top of her, or whatever. But she has no reaction to any of this. She's very, very just unemotional. The only time she expresses any emotion at all, really, is in defense of Gendo, who obviously, I guess in part she views him as a father figure, in part she views him as her husband. Like, I don't know, dude. I mean, she seems like she's in love with him. So again, right, weird Japanese stuff going on here. But okay, so that's that. So Gendo tries to bring his wife back, who's merged into the Ava. He fails, ends up creating Raya an army, and they make multiple clones of her, and they use her as the pilot for the first Ava. Okay, Ava 00, essentially. So that's that. At the same time that's going on, there's the mother of Oscar, who is German, and she also somehow merges into her Ava, but only part of her merges, and that's the part that loves her daughter. So anyway, she ends up going mad and commits suicide, which is why Oscar's totally mental. So basically, you've got 3 mentally ill children piloting massive robots. 3 mentally ill. Actually, are they really children? They're 14 years old. They're teenagers. They're on the cusp of, between childhood and adulthood. But you got 3 mentally ill and mentally damaged teenagers piloting massive robots and fighting against monsters, and they don't even know why they're fighting against them. They're just being driven to do it by adults that are just horrible to them. Gendo is just it just treats them with total disrespect and disregard and whatever. I mean, the whole story is really just about Shinji saying, like, Dad, why are you such an asshole? And why is everybody being mean to me? I mean, some people in reaction to this story, they say Shinji is a wimp. He's a pussy. He should man up. And he's too, self-pitying. And he is. It is true. He is a bit of a wuss. But he's also a warrior. I mean, he does go out there and fight these monsters. And goes into a state of rage, a state of berserk rage, and defeat them. So it's difficult to call him like a total coward, because he does fight. I mean, like, credit where credit is due, right? He chooses to fight. I mean, that's the very first episode of Evangelion. Like, he's given the choice: get into this Ava or bugger off, right? And he does it. He mans up and he does it. But it's just like, he's treated like a child, and nobody really, nobody's nice to him. Raya Ayanami is not nice to him. Oscar's not nice to him. His friends at school, one of them beats him up first. Later on, they become friends with him, and he's starting to he's like, oh, he's got some friends, he's got some pals, it's kind of cool. But then it turns out one of his friends also becomes a pilot for an Ava, and he ends up getting killed, right? So he loses that friend. And then you've got, of course, Misato Katsuragi, who, I mean, this happens right at the beginning of the show. Like, they don't know what to. She offers to look after him, basically, because she can see that he's all alone and nobody cares about him. So she's trying to look after him, and but she doesn't really know how to communicate with him. And she herself is also very withdrawn, and she communicates by flirting with guys and so on. She's emotionally withdrawn. She's an alcoholic. She's a 29-year-old alcoholic. She's very dedicated to her job. But she's not a great communicator. She doesn't really know how to care for Shinji. She's in part playing the role of a mother, in part playing the role of a big sister, but not really doing a very good job of it. I mean, she's trying, but she can't break through to him. But the point is, I guess part of the point is, like, one of the first things that struck me most looking at Evangelion, it reminded me of the Iliad, which may seem strange to you, but the Iliad, of course, is the story of Achilles having a disagreement with Agamemnon. That's what that story is all about, right? The Iliad, in case you don't know, was written by Homer. It's an ancient Greek epic. It's about the Trojan War. And so, the Trojans, Paris kidnaps Helen, takes her to Troy. The Greeks go back to rescue her. Achilles is there, tries to, fighting for Agamemnon to try to get, Helen back. What happens is, somewhere along the line, they annoy the gods, and this and that happens. But Achilles ends up falling out with Agamemnon because Agamemnon takes his concubine, who is called Briseis. Because of this, Achilles falls out with the king, and he refuses to fight. That's what the Iliad's all about. So there are many things going on here. One of the things that are interesting to me is that in that ancient Greek Hellenistic culture, they were fighting for honor. They were fighting because they chose to fight. They had freedom of will. They were warriors. They weren't soldiers. If somebody tried to refuse to fight in the Roman army, the general would just have the guy executed. But Agamemnon did not execute Achilles. He didn't order him to be executed. He didn't say, "You've disobeyed my order, boom, boom, boom." No, because they were warriors. They were there by their own free will. They were there because they promised to be there. Because Helen was the most beautiful woman in Greece. And so before the wedding, everybody promised that if anybody kidnapped her, they'd all go to get her back and what have you. So essentially they were fighting for virtues. They were noble warriors. They weren't just a soldier, in my opinion, is basically a slave. Like, you join the army, you follow orders, and you get told what to do, and that's it. Achilles did not have to follow the orders. He had a choice to fight or not to fight. And he fell out with Agamemnon because Agamemnon was being an arsehole and stole Briseis, his concubine. So what I'm trying to say here is the Iliad is about the relationship between the general and the warrior. Evangelion, I'm starting to get accustomed to calling it Evangelion now. I'm warming up to this. But anyway, Evangelion is also in many ways about the relationship between Shinji and his father. So it's about the relationship between the warrior and the general. And Shinji's father's a total asshole. He's a total asshole. He doesn't respect his son. He just says to his son, "Go and fight." And his son's like, "Why aren't you nice to me? Why can't you be nice to me?" I mean, it's framed as being nice, but I mean, to be fair, if you're a great warrior, because Shinji is a great warrior, he's literally defending humanity, defeating these giant space alien angels. Where's the praise? Where's the medal? Where's the pat on the back? Where's the thank you? Where are the trumpets? Right? Where's the money? Is he getting paid for this? Right? So he's not a child. He's a teenager. He's been forced into a man's job. Go out and fight for humanity, but they're treating him like a child. And I haven't seen anybody, again, in all of the videos that I watched, I haven't seen anybody point this out. But I mean, that's what I got from it straight away. I was just like, well, these guys are total assholes. Nerve are total assholes. I mean, Misato is nice to him, okay? She's a genuinely nice, good character and likable, okay? And she cares about him, and it does come across. But she's also just treating him like a boy, like a child. She's not treating him like a man. And if you're going out into the battlefield, you're a man now, and you should be treated like a man. And that's part of, I mean, for me, that's what I got from it. Shinji's not being treated as a man. Like, it's I don't think the story frames it in that way. I don't think the author of the story intended it to be that way. I don't think the audience sees it that way. But that's what I got from it. It's like he's not getting paid, right? He doesn't have a girlfriend. He's not getting paid, and he's not getting laid. You know, if you're going out risking your life fighting giant alien robots, you want to get paid, and you want to get laid, and you want a medal, and you want to be treated like a man, not just shat on by your father. I mean, really, that guy just needs a massive punch in the face. The whole reason this disaster is happening in the first place is because of him triggering the second impact. Allegedly. Well, we're not sure about that. So Shinji, he's just but then again, like, Shinji, he doesn't stick up for himself, does he? He doesn't stick up for himself. He's a bit wimpy. He should just be like, he does say fuck you, dad, and he says I'm not going to fight anymore, and he walks off. But that's not the real way to solve this problem. The real way to solve this problem is like, well, I'm not going to school anymore, and you guys got to treat me like an adult. Right, that would be the real way to solve all of this, but the story doesn't go there, and I don't think anybody even thought of this. I don't think anybody in the audience has even thought of this. But it's there's some kind of like arrested development going on here, you know, some kind of arrested development theme going on. There's some kind of like slave soldier thing, especially it comes out very clearly with Rei Ayanami, who's just, she just goes out and dies, and then they just, you know, bring to life another clone, and they don't give a shit about her at all. These people are awful. They're horrible. Anyway, slight detour there, but anyway, that's the story of like the three pilots. That's how the Evas were created. So I was trying to elaborate this plot. So essentially, like I was saying, Adam comes, Lilith comes. There's the first impact. Humanity is created. Seal comes along. They discover the Dead Sea Scrolls. They realize there's this prophecy. They send the scientists to Antarctica. The second impact happens when they discover Adam. Humanity's nearly wiped out. Peace is made. They know the angels are going to come in 2015, so they build the Avas in order to fight the angels. And during the process, you know, so Gendu takes control of Nerve for Seal, but during the process of the creation of the Evas, Gendu's wife ends up getting absorbed into Eva 0.1, and so he kind of goes a little bit crazy because of that. Shinji does not receive the love that he needs from his mother. His father turns into a complete asshole, and Rei Ayanami is created, and apparently, because what happens, and apparently, because Shinji ends up going to this high school, and he's in this class. Apparently, everyone in that class is their mother's dead. He doesn't know this. Okay, because for whatever reason, the way these Evas are built, only one person can pilot the Eva, or another person can pilot, but they've got to synchronize with the Eva. So, generally speaking, one person can synchronize. So they have this whole fake thing where like they're searching the world to find these pilots. Actually, they already know who all the pilots are, or they know who all the potential pilots are for the Evas that are being created. And they're all in the classroom together, but they don't tell them that. So again, it's the same theme. You're treating these people like children. You're just using them and abuse them. Nerve is just an asshole. It's all lies. They're all being lied to. They're being lied to by Seal, who wants to create the third impact so they can turn everybody into orange goo. And they're being lied to by Gendu, who wants to reanimate his dead wife, and is just treating these people like children. Okay, so Shinji has the reasons. He has a reasonable complaint to complain. A lot of people say he's just a wimp and he's a pussy and he's got to man up and blah 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 blah. No, he's being treated like shit. So that's the plot. That's the build up, and then what happens is the angels arrive. Shinji, I mean, it's interesting. The first scene, like Shinji's walking the streets of this new Tokyo place. They got this weird science fiction city, and like when the angels attack, the buildings go underground, and it's all kind of whatever. But he's walking the street. He's alone in the streets. There's nobody else there. There's a giant angel, and it's walking along, and the army's trying to stop it. They can't stop it. He gets found by Misato and taken, and he ends up piloting the Ava, and he ends up defeating the angel, and he ends up getting sucked into this thing, and then and that's it. And then from that point onwards, it's a case of they fight the angels. I don't know. I just can't. To be honest with you, that's just the background to the plot. And like I said, it becomes annoying to me to try to explain this plot. It annoys me trying to explain it. I've got to be honest with you. But I mean, that's the basic background. Then you've got the pilots. They're piloting the angels. They fight the angels, and it's repetitious in a way. It's repetitious in that. I mean, I saw one video. The guy was just slagging off Evangelion. I'm getting used to calling it Evangelion now. He's just slagging it off, saying, "Oh, it's terrible. It's rubbish. It's not a good show. It's overhyped. Blah 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 blah." And I don't know. It was a funny video, but I agree with one of the comments he said in that every single battle scene is the same. You know, they send out the Avas to fight the angel. They get defeated by the angel, and there's this massive emergency, whoop, 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 oh my god, and then they make a special plan, and then the special plan works, and they beat the angel, right? That's essentially what happens. There's not really any location movement. All the battles take place in the same city, except for one battle that takes place in the ocean. There's not really... I mean, it's the same three pilots, basically, fighting different angels. I mean, there's variation in the angels, who take different forms and come in sneaky different ways. So that's interesting. And there's one that hacks the computer. There's one that kind of drops from the sky. So there's one that splits in two. There's there's a variation in that way. And then of course, like, the kids are going through their own teenage dramas. They've got to go through all these fights. They're falling out with each other, and you have the whole essential character curve of Oscar, who comes in. She thinks she's the best pilot ever, and better than Shinji, but then like she gets beaten a couple of times or whatever, and she gets all depressed and upset about it. She's angry. Her whole thing, like I think I said, her mother also kind of like merged with the Ava and ended up committing suicide. So she's trying to prove herself. She's very arrogant and what have you. She ends up going mad. Right, so you got the characters going through the character arc in the background, but there is a repetitious nature to it. So I understand when people criticize and say, "Well, this show's like, it's not as good as people say it is." And another thing he pointed out, which is a real bugbear of mine, is that none of the main characters die, which is true. And I'm usually very harsh in this regard, especially my criticism of superhero movies, because the superheroes never die. And without sacrifice in a world, in a story, then you don't really bring the characters to life. Because if none of the characters die, or if they die and they just get brought back to life again, as in Rei Ayanami, then the world is a safe place. And so why should you care? Why should you care if the character's dead? Okay, so usually I'm very critical about this, but whatever. Evangelion gets away with it somehow. Probably because the characters are just funny. It's a funny show, by the way. There's a lot of teenage embarrassment in it, and kissing, and this, that, and kids laughing in the classroom, and blah blah blah. It's silly, it's sexual, it's funny, and it just gets carried along with that. It's the comparison between normal life of teenage kind of drama with fighting giant monsters in the background. It's a great combination. And the conspiracy element of, the adults are lying, right? Mom and dad is lying. There's weird shit, there's weird conspiracy shit going on in the background, and we don't understand. That's there in the background, but it's very much in the background. And the story works. It just works. It's a fun story. I do think it does fall to pieces in the last 3 episodes, and I do think it is disappointing, and I do think it is slightly boring, to be quite frank. I would much rather have had a giant robot battle to end the series. But what is, as I say, what is essentially what happens is at the end of the series, the first series, 26 episodes, one character turns up. He becomes a pilot for the Ava, but it turns out this pilot is actually an angel himself. But he has befriended Shinji, and he's like the one guy that manages to actually talk to Shinji. This is the whole of Evangelion is about everyone's being an arsehole to Shinji, basically. He's the one guy who manages to befriend him, manages to talk to him, but then it turns out he himself is actually an angel. And he goes down. But by the way, nobody really knows what the angels are doing, like why they're attacking, and like there's no clear motivation. But it said that one of the motivations is they want to get on, they want to connect with Lilith, who is being held underground in Nerve headquarters. They want to connect with her, and somehow create a third impact or some kind of explosion or whatever. I don't flipping know. But this angel, he goes down. Shinji has to defeat him, and he chooses to die because he could have merged with Lilith, third impact, had the third impact, wiped out humanity. He's an angel himself. He could have done it, but he doesn't. He chooses to die. He says Shinji's worth, humanity's worth fighting for. Humanity should have a chance at survival, and Shinji's forced to kill him, and he does. And so he goes totally mad because of that. I mean, this is after he's basically almost... He himself doesn't kill his friend, but his Ava the Nerve takes over control of his Ava and forces his Ava to kill his friend in a different battle. But I mean, it's like the second time it's happened. Like, he's made a friend and he's kind of got to kill him, right? So Shinji's totally pissed off about all this. And that angel was the last angel. So now we're all set up for the third impact, and then everything just gets weird for the last 2 episodes, and you have this strange, like, oh man, just internal Shinji talking to himself and asking questions to himself, and it's all very arty-farty and philosophical and blah blah blah. But as I say, the conclusion is Shinji forgives himself. Shinji forgives himself. He rejects the human instrumentality project. He doesn't want to merge into the yellow goo, and he kind of accepts himself for who he is, faults and all, warts and all, and he grows up and he becomes a man. And that's it. And it's a good story. It's a good story. It's a flawed masterpiece. It's a flawed masterpiece because you should watch it and be 100% absorbed all throughout. But the last 2-3 episodes for me are just boring. I mean, it's I don't even mind the weird philosophy stuff and the lack of explanation. That's fine. That's cool. As I've just repeatedly said through the whole of this video presentation, that's cool. That's what makes Evangelion brilliant. All right, the fact that it's fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy, and you don't know what the hell is going on. So I'm not complaining about that. I'm not complaining about the lack of clarity in the explanation or whatever. What I am complaining about the fact that it is just a little bit boring. It is a little bit boring, just watching like Shinji go mad and weird visuals and well, you'd have to watch it to kind of I don't know how to verbally explain what happens, but it's just this crazy philosophical introspection that happens at the end of the show. It's just boring to watch. So I mean, that is what it is. I mean, maybe if you're an atheist, you'll find it very interesting because you think it's going to reveal the secrets of the universe to you. For me, it's not very impressive. It seems to me, like I said earlier, it seems like solipsism, which is a form of philosophy whereby essentially solipsism is extreme idealism. And idealism, basically in metaphysics, there's a division here. I mean, I've got 5 minutes to explain this, so I should have talked about this earlier, but this has been something I've been working on also in the background, trying to understand this, because I think I had a misunderstanding of what idealism is. But anyway, in philosophy, in metaphysics, you have two basic schools of thought. You have the materialists and you have the idealists. And the materialists believe that matter is primary, and the idealists believe that the mind is primary. And the easiest way to understand it is through causality. So a materialist would believe that matter affects the mind and kind of like controls the mind, and the mind is like secondary to matter. But the idealist believes that the mind is primary and matter is secondary. So an ethno-nationalist, for example, a racist, is a materialist in a way, because a racist will say, well, you know, a black person has a certain type of body, and so his mind is going to be a certain type of way, right? A lot of the woke left are extreme idealists in a way. They believe in mind over matter. They believe if in your mind you've made up and you have decided that you're a woman, then you are a woman. Okay, or maybe you're an attack helicopter or whatever. So this is the difference between materialism and idealism. If you take idealism to the extreme, you end up with solipsism, which is the belief that there is nothing outside your own mind. So everything that you see in the universe is just part of your mind. And it's a philosophical conclusion you can reach, because obviously you're perceiving the universe. Like, you can't see what you're not perceiving. Even if you imagine something, that's a form of perception. Okay? So everything you hear, touch, taste, or whatever, you're perceiving. So it's all being perceived with your mind. Your mind is the number one sense instrument, if you like. Your mind is the combination of your nose, your eyes, your tongue, your taste, your hearing, whatever. It's all in your mind. It's the thing that joins all your senses together. So some philosophers reach the conclusion that, well, I am the universe. There's only me and there's nobody else. And it seems to me that Evangelion, goes in that direction towards solipsism. That's what I got out of the last 3 episodes. But that may have just been something because of the Human Instrumentality Project. I don't know. It's weird. It's convoluted. It's art. But that's what I got out of it. Rei Ayanami, Oscar, Misato, they all basically said, we are parts of your mind. We are within your mind. And of course, this is madness and stupidity. Like if you're a solipsist, you are insane. And of course, the creator, Hideaki Anno, he was kind of mad. I mean, the show was written in a state of extreme depression for him. He was working for an anime company, and they'd rejected a number of his projects, and he was kind of pissed off. And then somebody said, look, we'll whatever, you do this and we'll publish it. And he said, okay. Apparently they wrote it organically. Plot was not worked out. There are 2 ways to write a story. Either organically, where you figure out as you go, or as an architect, where you figure out the whole plot and then you fill in the gaps like a dot to dot. This was organic. I'm getting increasingly fascinated by this process of writing, because I've written stories before. I always took the architect method, but the organic method just seems wild, right? Wild, like a wild ride. So I'm tempted to write down a story and just like, where's it going to go? You don't know how it's going to end, and then you're just going to go mad. It seems very exciting. It seems like a very exciting and interesting way to write. Spirited Away was written in a similar way. But episode to episode, on the first run of Evangelion, they didn't know what was going to happen. Okay? And then right at the end of it, and if the stuff was getting broadcast, apparently, it's incredible, really. And then they get to the end of it. I guess the guy has a complete mental breakdown. He's obviously spent the whole series pouring his depression into the show. Shinji is obviously him. He thinks nobody loves him, nobody cares about him, but he has to struggle in this world and fight. And he's fighting these great, dark, ancient forces, and yet nobody respects him, right? And so he's half mad when he's writing this story, and he comes to an insane conclusion, which is solipsism, which is I am like everything's in my mind, everything's in my head. It's kind of it is a form of madness. I mean, it's a philosophical position that you can take. You can justify it with logical arguments, but it's silly. No serious person would realistically call themselves a solipsist. But nonetheless, that appears to be that to me. Again, I haven't seen anybody else reach this conclusion after watching Evangelion, but that's what I got out of it. That's what I got out of it. Solipsism. And then at the end of the show, Shinji accepts that all these different characters that are in the story are aspects of his own personality, and then he forgives them all and forgives himself and accepts himself, all of his faults, and he grows up. You know, but you could argue, of course, that maybe that's, I mean, it's mistranslated from the Japanese. Who knows, right? It's art. I don't know. Another way of looking at it would be to say that he just realizes that the way he perceives the people around him is in his mind. Okay, so maybe he perceives that person as being a good person and that person as being a bad person. So his perception of the people around him are aspects of his personality. That might be another way of looking at it. I don't know, but whatever. Anyway, 1 hour, amazing show. You watch it, it's brilliant, it's annoying. You try to understand it, you end up going on the internet and watching 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of YouTube videos trying to figure out what it's all about. And then at the end of it, you end up feeling like you've been initiated into a cult, essentially. That's what I feel like now. I feel like I am part of the Evangelion fan club. Right? I'm in it there. I'm there. I've studied this thing, okay? I get it. I can talk about Evangelion. I understand it. Ordinary people, normies, they don't get it. They don't know what it's all about. They're stupid, right? But I have an idea of what it's all about, right? That's the beauty of the show. It really is a work of genius. A work of genius. And there you go. I'm assuming if you've watched all of this that you've already watched it, but if you haven't, go and watch it. I mean, I've given you spoilers, but I don't think it will spoil it. It's the animation is fantastic, the fight scenes are fantastic, and I mean, and this is another thing about the show which I should point out. Last point I'll make, but they're so talented at making a disaster worse, right? Like they don't. It's not just like you're in a fight and it's always going a little bit bad. No, it's like the Avas fight the angels and it's total destruction, death, disaster, red lights flashing, emergency. Oh my God, it's all over. The world's going to end. Screaming terror. I mean, the fight scenes are fantastic. Very high intensity. I guess you could argue in a way that the whole show's kind of schizo in a way, because you flip-flop between these insanely intense fight scenes and just like teenage comedy drama, right? With a bit of weird adult stuff lurking in the background. The adult stuff doesn't really come out until halfway through the show as well. Like it's really just the beginning of the show is teenage drama plus fighting giant monsters, and then gradually the adult themes and the conspiracy in the background starts to unfold, right? It's great. It's a great show. It really is really well composed, brilliant story. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Do recommend it. And I reckon in as I say, I watched Evangelion first like 10 years ago. This is the second time I've watched it. And I reckon in 10 years' time, I'll probably watch it again. You know, it's a great show. All right. Thank you for listening. God bless. Good night.